Do they know how to do it?
Welcome everybody. Thank you for your patience. We appreciate you all coming. Welcome to the Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education regular meeting for August 26, 2014. Madam Secretary, may we please have a roll call?
Yes. Mark Baird.
Present.
Leanne Charlo.
Present.
Julie Gatto.
Present.
Richard Haig.
Present.
Christine Ledginger. Present. John Morozen.
Present.
Susan Wright.
Present.
That's 7. We have a quorum. We can begin. We were going to start with our Pledge of Allegiance, and to lead us, we're going to surprise our new and 2 principals to lead us jointly in our Pledge of Allegiance. Our new, yes.
Okay.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well done. Thank you. Sorry for the surprise. We'll open our meeting as we do every week with the opportunity for anybody from the community who would like to address the board. Please do so. Feel free to do so. If you'd like to, stand up to the podium and state your name and address and speak your mind. And if nobody would like to do that, we encourage you to in the future, but we'll move on to our reports and begin with our brand new principal at the elementary school, Miss Margaret St. Clair.
Good evening, everybody. We're really happy to be here. I'm really thrilled with the start of our school year. Our first few days have been a huge success. We started off with a Meet the Teacher last week where we had a huge turnout, and the first few days of school have gone really well. Kids are happy to be at school. They're very calm. Teachers also are very happy and calm and positive, which is great. We have 13 new staff members at Lake Bluff Elementary School this year, and so we're really thrilled with our mentoring program because we have each one paired up with a mentor in our staff. Also, we really are thankful that our staff got to participate in the Capturing Kids' Hearts training, which took place the week prior to our meetings back at the elementary school. Our Capturing Kids' Hearts training was 3 full days, about 8 hours each day. I think we all noticed that the attendees really were so engaged and involved. There was no multitasking, there were no sidebar conversations. It was just an amazing experience that brought our staff and the participants from the middle school together. We've seen a lot of the skills that we learned in that training right in the classrooms from day one, so we're really pleased about that. The PTO funded the installation of a Gaga pit at Lake Bluff Elementary School, so we're hoping it stops raining so we can go out for recess. And
what's a Gaga pit?
A Gaga pit, there's one at the middle school too. It's a large structure out on the playground area that there's a ball game that goes with it. But it gives a really nice opportunity for a lot of students to play. And it gives kind of another activity for students to choose at recess time. So they're really excited, but it's rained every day at like 11 o'clock, so that's been tricky. Finally, we had a lot of training over this summer, specifically with our new Bridges program for math. And our math program has been very successful, as you'll see with our scores that you will see from last year. So we're really excited to continue that training in the curriculum. So thanks very much.
Margaret, what is Capturing Kids' Hearts? What's the focus of that training?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Capturing Kids' Hearts is not a curriculum, but a program to train staff on how to work with students to build relationships in the classroom, to develop kind of a school-wide philosophy in working with children. So it's all about building relationships. It starts with building a social contract with your class and where everybody's involved. We've been able to do that as an administrative team as well, and also we've done it with our staff. So the whole school is really involved in some of these practices. It also involves greeting every student at the classroom door by shaking their hand, saying good morning, really getting a pulse of how students are feeling about the day and about school, so that you can build those relationships to then start getting to the hard work of learning. So we had teachers that were trained earlier prior to this year that came back and had really positive things to say about it, and we're really happy to say that almost every single classroom teacher, with the exception of a couple, have had the training now, and so students are getting a common experience from class to class.
Good, thank you.
Anybody else? Thanks. Now we have the middle school report from Principal Nate Blackmer.
Good evening. I can tell you that while the summer was very nice, I know that I looked forward to the return of the students. The building was quite quiet, and it is no longer. So we're very excited to have our students back. A couple of things that I wanted to mention. The first opportunity to welcome students to the building was back on August 13th. That was our new student and 6th grade student locker day. They get to have a private or public, then later private lesson if they need it, on opening their lockers, and I enjoyed teaching that lesson. Everyone was successfully able to get into their lockers and in many cases put their school supplies in there. And so our returning students, when they came, noticed a great difference in the building, and it was those lockers. We had them all painted over the course of the summer. They're a nice new looking blue color, and all the lockers are now numbered in a sequence that makes sense, which is of course a real upside for us. Wanted to thank Steve Miller. He's done a great job, so has his crew, preparing both buildings, really getting them ready for the return of our staff and students, and I think a lot of the parents also noticed just how great everything looked when they returned. Some of the summer work that I did want to mention that's been done, the advisory program. We spent a great deal of time as a staff discussing the fact that since we've moved into Power School Parent Access and we've given parents the ability to essentially take a look into a teacher's gradebook and get current information about how students are doing in each class, some of the practices that we had as part of our student-led conferences became a bit outdated and needed some refinement. Research shows that goal setting for students is very, very powerful. And so we've incorporated a lot of that goal setting and progress monitoring and data collection into our advisory program. It's something that's going to be occurring throughout the year, and parents are going to be learning a lot more about this at curriculum night, and are certainly going to be involved in that process as well. But we're looking forward not only to working toward those goals, but developing and helping students to understand the kinds of things that need to be accomplished in order to achieve those goals, and have a way in which to measure their success. The first round of conferences in the fall are going to include kind of setting those goals in place with the help of their parents, and then that winter conference is going to be an opportunity either for celebration because we've completed or made significant progress on the goal, or planning for continued work toward achieving that goal. So more to come. Parents will learn a lot about that during curriculum night. Was very excited to welcome new staff to our building. We have just 2 as opposed to the 13 in the elementary school. Dave Pauke is our 6th grade social studies teacher. Many of you know Liz Schutz has moved up to 8th grade to take over for Marshall Krall, who retired last year. And then Corinne Horner is our new 6th and 7th grade Spanish teacher. So those are our 2 new staff members, and I think you'll have the opportunity to meet them at an upcoming board meeting. And then I also wanted to just give a quick plug. One of the highlights of at least the first 4 days, now that we're on our 4th day for us, was the 6th grade clapping. This is something we've done, I think now for our 2nd year, where I kind of sneak the 7th and 8th graders into the gym, and we spend just a few minutes touching base about things to be aware of for the new school year. And then we call the 6th grade down. They really don't know why they're being called to the gym, but we've planned a warm welcome for them. This year was no different. The students in 7th and 8th grade cheered and celebrated and clapped and welcomed our students in 6th grade to the building. And if you're curious to see what that looks like, we did want to go ahead and post a video link to it, which can be accessed from our middle school page under the Twitter feed. If you happen to be a subscriber to our Twitter feed, LBMS65 would be another way to take a look at that. And so I just wanted to mention that was a fun opportunity for all of our kids. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nate. Anybody have any questions? No? Thanks. President's report. This is brief. I just want to say a warm, heartfelt welcome back to students, teachers, families. I want to express the appreciation of the board for a lot of hard work that we know was done by teachers over the summer, putting in time doing curricular work. I want to express appreciation and thanks to administration for a lot of hours over the summer, catching up and getting organized so that we can have a successful opening day despite the rain. I want to say thank you to we're going to start our planned negotiation meetings with representatives from the union in this month. We're going to have a meeting once a month, at least once a month, for the next several months with designated members of the union in the district, with the idea that we will be negotiating a contract in the spring. And I want to say thank you to them, and we're very excited to begin those negotiations. And then finally, just a little housekeeping. We have some committees to decide on for the board. This is what I'm going to hand out to you guys now is the current committee assignments. And I want everybody to take a quick look at that and make sure that you're okay with where you are. If anybody has any exceptions, wants to change something, please speak up. We also need to start a committee, I'm not sure what we're going to call it, but it's going to be to
Evaluate.
Gene's evaluation. We have to redo the evaluation tool because there was quite a bit of discussion the last time we evaluated Gene about the tool that we used and how it was inadequate. So we need to have some volunteers to be on an evaluation committee that we will get going sooner rather than later to make sure that we have everything in place to evaluate Gene come the new year.
I thought it was on the technology committee. Is that separate from this?
That's a district committee.
Okay.
These are board committee and reps. So yes, you are on that.
So we have to do this evaluation committee. I'd be glad to be part of it, but we need, how many people do you think we need on it? You're going to be on it, and
Well, if 2, we don't have to post. 3, we post.
I mean, it doesn't matter. We don't
Doesn't
have to
make any difference.
I know there were some people
There's
with some
always
specific
three.
opinions about the evaluation tool.
Okay. I'll be on it.
Anybody else like to put their 2 cents in?
I can do it if you need somebody else.
Okay. Great. Anybody have any concerns about the existing committee assignments? Is this all public information? This is all public information. Is there a way to find this on the website somewhere if anybody's interested?
No, but we can make that found tomorrow.
Yeah, why don't, if it's not a big deal, let's get this on there, just so everything we do is out there. So that's my president's report. Thank you for everybody coming and welcome back at the beginning of the school year. Let's get this going in a really positive way. And now Dr. Sophie will do her superintendent report.
Welcome back to the 14-15 school year. We had a busy summer, as you know or may have heard. We did our registration this year online, which was very successful. It also has allowed parents to update their information if things change, like cell phone numbers, which we've had an issue with trying to keep up with. We did do online teacher assignments in August, and I got a lot of positive feedback from that from parents. We're still working on our end. There were a couple minor issues with it that we need to work through, but for the most part, everybody was happy and they could all access their assignments at the same time, which I think is very important. Our technology people worked on preparing our laptops and iPads and working with the system to get us ready for the school year. Make sure that we're totally ready before the new state testing starting in the spring. We did a lot of curriculum work, which Kelly is going to be sharing with us very shortly here. The guys worked on buildings to clean and organize, and I think it's also important to note with 13 teachers in one building and 2 in the other, they spent a lot of their time at the elementary school moving things. So many of the teachers are in new classrooms and they move supplies, and our enrichment team, now that our enrichment and gifted team is reforming, now has a new office where they can actually see kids. So that part is nice too. And when you're over at Meet the Teacher at Elementary, check that out. It's a really nice setup. So we spent a lot of the summer recruiting, interviewing, hiring, talking to the Illinois State Board on certification and preparing new teachers for the school year. Our administrative team spent 3 days at what I call a retreat at the Glen Rowan House. And we spent time listening to speakers talk about legal issues, go through our data with us and review that, get to know each other. We had some icebreakers. It was exciting for me because Todd from Croya volunteered to come over and his team did icebreakers for us, and they provided that as a service. So what a wonderful community group. Our Teacher Institute days were busy. Last Wednesday we had an all-staff opening where we talked a lot about what we did over the summer. We talked about our what we accomplished last year according to the strategic plan, what our goals for this year. And it really, I've heard a lot of feedback that it really stopped that itch from teachers that they have to get back into their classrooms right away. They were able to enjoy and really listen to the goals for the district this year. The beginning of school was smooth. I ordered Sun. My orders did not come through. It's my first day of school in my entire career that we've ever had rain. And I was at both schools and entry, and I can honestly say it was also the first time that the kids very confidently walked in the building for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade entry over at elementary, and the parents looked a little bit more uncertain. And I usually don't see that. I see that with younger kids, but I think the parents as excited as they are, it's the beginning of a new school year. At the middle school, it was exciting to see Nate. He was out there high-fiving all the kids, which was exciting. And on the other end, Margaret had all the younger ones going through, for many of them, for their first day of school, going into the cafeteria since we couldn't have a really efficient arrival plan that day with the pouring rain. Let's see. Last weekend I did want to share, I attended coffee hour at Grace United Methodist in Lake Bluff and met with a very, very nice group of people who wanted to hear what was going on in the district and also wanted to let us know that they are there if we ever need them for anything. They talked about possibly adopting our school district, which was very exciting to me, and it was just a really nice event, along with the pool party from the PTO, which was very well attended, and it was very hot, so that helped too.
You had sun for that? Sunny day for that?
We did have a sunny day for that, so that worked very well. I do have enrollment figures that I'd like to share in here somewhere. We have increased our enrollment by, you don't have those figures right in front of you, Kevin, do you? We might be behind. We do. Last year at this time, our district total was around 848. We're now up to 858. Class sizes are within our range, so we don't have any particularly high or particularly low. And we have, I think, 3 more kids in the hopper for enrollment. So we were commenting today that the enrollment projections that were done, I believe 3 or 4 years ago, have not really been accurate for this district. And that's a good thing. We like to see our enrollment going up and the kids coming to school. And that's my report.
Anybody have any questions?
I'll make just a quick comment that I'm happy to hear the enrollment figures being described, because every year at about this time I hear so many comments from parents anecdotally. You know, one of them, so many people are leaving the district, and then the next parent, so many people are coming to the district, we must be overwhelmed, you know. So it's just nice to have the facts out there, and I know the numbers shift around at the beginning of the year, so I appreciate you still having them for us tonight, because I think that'll help people quell those rumors.
It's been very calm, and I will share that we had several families return that were gone last year from a variety of things. Often families move out of town for the year as one of the spouses is on a different assignment. So it's always nice to welcome our families back to our district.
And, okay, so you're all set?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Julie,
then we're gonna, Julie, if you had anything that, if the land use committee for the park district met over the summer at all, if you wanted to update us, I don't know if you guys met or not.
We have been meeting, and our task now is just to inventory the open spaces in the various areas of the village. It's sort of an interesting process. I learned a lot about the town that we have and the different borders that we have for different districts. It's more complicated than you might think. But we won't actually get down to allocation of that property for some months now.
Okay.
So right now it's information gathering.
Okay. So we move on to item 6, which is discussions, and we're going to start with Kelly Bay, who's going to give us a curriculum presentation.
Nothing that we know about. And this is called a Prezi. Our kids are now, PowerPoint is being outdated, just so everyone knows. I actually tried a Prezi for opening day. It was easier in many ways, but all my lines crossed over each other and I had to have Terry untangle them for
So
me.
Prezi is a software package?
Prezi
Yeah.
is it's a
Presentation
free
package.
online resources for presentations. There's a lot of things you can do with it. But they are saying PowerPoint is being updated. So this is what a Prezi looks like, and you'll see as Kelly presents.
Good evening, nice to see everyone. I'll do just a quick introduction. So my name is Kelly Day. I'm our new curriculum coordinator, teacher leader. I've served as an enrichment team member for the last 3 years with an emphasis on literacy, reading, English language arts. So I'm thrilled to be stepping into this role, working more intimately with our teachers to plan curriculum and really make some great decisions for the students throughout the school district. So very quickly, this is a Prezi, as Dr. Sophie has shared. This was my first attempt at a Prezi, so I wanted to take a risk with technology and really try to present information in a little bit different of a way. You should know that we do have students at our middle school that are quite savvy with this tool, so they're using this as an option to PowerPoint. Kind of allows for a little more interactive, and you'll get to see how it zooms in and out, allowing some different perspective on topics. So this was my first risk with it, and I think it turned out pretty great. So just want to share the hard work that our teachers engaged in this summer in various areas. So a quick glimpse at what the talented staff has been up to between trips to the pool and other summer events. So we have 541 documented hours of summer work, and so you can see various areas that different staff members engaged in summer work that address needs from pre-K, or our new early childhood program, all the way through 8th grade. A lot of different areas that we were able to focus on. I tried to capture some of the quotes and comments that I was able to catch from our staff members, and you can see all very positive. That last one, a lot of go-getters. They were really excited to just kind of keep the work going and be able to come in the following day or week and just tackle their tasks and really make some good decisions for the upcoming school year. Few pictures, some snapshots I was able to take. This is our kindergarten team working. They divided up some tasks and were able to conquer quite a bit to get themselves ready to tackle writing and English language arts Common Core work this year. Our reading specialists were taking a little walk through park this summer to learn more about what that assessment tool is going to look like and how we can prepare our teachers better to support students with that assessment.
Is that, Kelly, were those hours in both buildings or just one building?
Yes, sir, throughout the district.
Okay.
541 throughout the district. Kevin did a nice overview for a lot of our staff members. He's here now with this is the language arts team at the middle school talking about park. Third graders stepped out for this one, the third grade teachers, also doing some work. They've got English language arts calendar there. They're really looking at how they were going to teach to some of the standards this year. Liz Schutz and Jane Tuhig and Anna Dunn working on Socratic Circles, a nice framework to guide students in some speaking, listening skills and emphasis on discussion, looking closely at text that they're going to try to implement in social studies this year and share with staff. Here we have a newly formed executive functioning team that's going to share some information with staff on how we can support students with executive functioning skills. A lot of hard work this summer. And just kind of a silly picture, here's the two members of our first grade team, really engaged. They had all of their materials out and resources, and they were working hard this summer. So celebrations, I just want to point out that there were some great aha moments, new understandings related to curriculum with an emphasis on writing and math. As we mentioned, we've moved towards the second edition of Bridges, so some new understandings happening there. I wanted to celebrate all of the preparation that teachers dove into this summer, and that gift of time. It means a lot to be able to focus as a team on curriculum and work together and kind of take that teaching part out for just a little bit so they can work to make some new decisions moving forward. And I also want to mention the dedication. All of our staff, that 541 is just the documented hours, but we know that the time that they've spent really exceeds that. And I feel really proud of all of our teachers throughout the district. That commitment is so evident in the work that they do, the time that they put in, and the work doesn't stop. We know that throughout the school year there's even more happening, so I want to point out that dedication. And some of our big outcomes through this summer were teachers really worked to plan that first month and establish routines. We talked about capturing kids' hearts and how important it is to really get some of that team and trust and relationship building going. They were able to really look at the big picture. We know that if we can lay that groundwork and know where we're headed, we're going to be so much more successful in the long run. Tons of team building happening, during breaks as they're getting started, they're sharing some of the things that are happening over the summer, and when the teachers can connect, that strengthens their instruction for students. The trust that they build with one another, and then that momentum to begin was evident, and I think it's still continued. So that's all for this particular presentation.
Questions? Thanks, I
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
All right, so we're going to move on to 6B, which is Jay Kahn, our new Director of Business. At some point, we have to stop saying new, because that won't be for that long. And he's going to discuss the 2014-2015 tentative budget. Jay, I just want to say, too, that you're going to get into the details of how you got to where you did. But I would like it to either come up naturally, or I'm going to force it at the end, for us to have a conversation as a board publicly about our philosophy when it comes to budgeting. Just kind of the kind of guidance we're giving the district, you guys, as to what we want to see in the budgets and the work that's the nature of where the board is coming from and the way we want you to approach budgeting. So whether that comes up organically as part of the conversation or not, I'd like to have that happen today. Right.
Before Jay gets started, I also want to make a comment that next Tuesday is our committee of the whole on finances. And I will be passing out, when Jay's done, an agenda for next week's meeting. But for the sake of letting the public know, we will be reviewing these budget documents again with any revisions from tonight. We will be talking about our fund balance and our fund balance policy, because it's time to review that. We will be talking about projections. We will be giving an update on the elementary school and the middle school grounds, some of the issues from outside that we want to talk about. And then Jay has a proposal for some wording to be added to policy 4.80, accounting and audits, dealing with the capital assets threshold. So I will pass that agenda out to you, but keep in mind that there'll be time for questions. Next week also, on top of tonight. I do want to remind everybody, though, that next week's meeting is at Lake Bluff Middle School. We will still have the meeting videotaped, and we will be posting it on our website the following day. It's all yours, Jay.
I just want to remind everyone as we go through this is the tentative budget, so this is the first draft of the budget, and we will be coming back in a month at the next board meeting to approve the final budget. And between now and then, we can get input. We'll go back and review our assumptions and can incorporate any input or questions from the board.
So this is the budget for the current school year.
This is the budget for next year, but it's just the first draft of the budget, the tentative budget.
For the 14-15.
For the 14-15 school year.
But it's
I'm sorry, it's the current school year.
Current school year, but it's how we're gonna allocate the levy that we approved last year.
Right. The 2013 levy is collected in 2014. People have already paid their first installment. The entire 2014 levy is booked as revenue for the 2014-15 school year. So just to get started, there's really, on the bottom line, not a lot of change. The budget is balanced. Our revenues support our expenditures. But there's a lot kind of going on in the details, and much of it is just sort of changes in accounting, so it's not changing what we're doing as a district or how we're spending our money, it's just tracking it differently. And so I wanted to go through some of those changes that are being made. One of them is to reclassify some expenditures into different accounts. There is an Illinois program manual or administrative code that dictates where certain expenses should be categorized. Accounting is sort of an art, and different people have different ideas about where things should go. And every auditor and or business person will have slight changes. So I'm molding this budget to fit how I've learned to book things and how my auditors in the past have preferred them to be booked. An example would be software licenses. There's something, we have supplies and we have purchase services. A supply is something you buy and use and have and use up. And a software license is something we're really paying somebody for a service. We're paying for the right to use their program. They're providing us the service of whatever their program does. So that's an example where in the past it may have been booked to one category and I'm just merely booking it to another. So you may see big decreases in some categories and increases in others, and it's not because we're drastically changing how we're doing things, it's just how things are being recorded. One of the other changes is the capitalization threshold. Every company is required, every for-profit company is required to capitalize and depreciate their assets so that they can't deduct all of their expenses at once. They could make a huge purchase and deduct their expenses and get rid of any taxes that they pay. So the government limits how much they can deduct in any given year. Because as a school district, we are loaned money by the broader market, we have to report our financials in the same manner so that they can understand the creditworthiness of our district and compare it to other companies. So we are required as well to capitalize and depreciate our assets. Our current threshold just defaulted to 500 because that's what the state sets, but that's a very low threshold relatively compared to what most corporations will use, and it requires us to track a significant amount of purchases. Pretty much anything we purchase over $500 needs to be recorded and tracked and depreciated every year, and so there's this enormous list of assets that we have to manage. I'm proposing to raise the threshold so that simply we don't have to do all that accounting because we don't pay taxes, so the depreciation argument really doesn't matter for us, and we're still going to track our computer inventory and all of our assets that we need to keep track of. So it's simply making less work for me. And we pay less to our auditors who are keeping track of it for us.
Is that a decision that you have to make an application to the state to raise it, or you just?
This is a decision set by board policy,
okay.
And it will actually be brought to discussion to the board, and you will vote on whether or not to approve that.
So it'll be a separate policy.
Right. So I've drafted the budget, assuming that you will approve that increase. If that doesn't come to pass, then this is just the tentative budget, and I can correct it before the final budget.
What's the proposed new threshold?
$5,000. That is more. Then we would only be capitalizing major equipment purchases, trucks, large maintenance equipment, or buildings and improvements to buildings and things like that.
Instead of clocks and garbage cans.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So just a few other quick ones. Private facility tuition that we pay for special education students. The state manual says you should book it to one account versus another, and we were booking it all to the same account last year. And then we have a significant amount of money flowing through our student activity accounts currently, on the order of $150,000, and I am proposing to move that into the school district budget. Most of these expenses are really school district expenses. They're field trips, they're extracurricular activities, and things that are district expenses that are run by the district staff We collect money just like we collect fees from parents, and we manage and run the programs. By school code, student activity accounts are primarily used to just manage money that's raised and directed by students. So I have a student club, I raise the money and I want to keep it safe and make sure that the staff doesn't misuse it. Then the district monitors it for them and keeps it in the activity fund. So there's a tremendous amount of activity that's off the books right now, which one does not present a fair and accurate account of how much it costs to run the school district to provide services. Also, there's less oversight. Things are managed at the school instead of at the district office. And I have one other reason that escapes me, but basically that's what the law says, and that's what
What do you mean off the books?
Off the books, meaning off of our annual financial report.
So where was the report?
These activity accounts are still audited. So I do not see any evidence that the money is not being used correctly or appropriately. It's just simply that we don't know how much money we spend on field trips, for example, because
It's more difficult to track.
it's money in and out, and we also don't know how much it costs to run the front office, because maybe money from Horizons that was left over was used to buy free lunches for students, and really we should know how much we're spending on those types of things, or buy toner for the office printer. And so there are expenses that are being managed kind of separately and not being accounted for in our financial statements.
Is this something we have to go back and correct for prior years?
No. This is something that, again, there are rules and there is somewhat flexible interpretation in many districts. So this is just a more rigorous
But the
interpretation.
150, that total has been included in prior year expenses somewhere, correct?
Not
Or is that
necessarily.
So are you
So-
telling us that that's going to be an incremental expense in upcoming years that we haven't had in prior years? So when we
Yes.
compare year-to-year
Correct.
information, that's
So,
going
but there will be offsetting revenue, so you will see revenue and expense go up by the same amount.
Okay.
So there should be no net impact to fund balance, but yes, you may see a large increase in expenses, and that's why I'm pointing out here, some of those things are not truly incremental expenses, they're just things that we didn't heretofore put on our accounting records.
It better reflects our expenses
Mhm.
for planning.
I'm glad you're making that change. That makes a lot of sense.
And then also, finally, I'm comparing this budget here. You'll see all my comparisons are to last year's budget. We're currently don't have our audit results back yet, and I'm in the process of converting our district books from a cash basis to an accrual basis, so I can't currently today look at a report from our system and know what our true financial results are.
And I know that we've asked that question, but just to
Sure.
reiterate, can you review why we're doing it?
Very quickly, the basis of accounting is the timing of when you book expenditures and revenues. And a very good example is the tax levy. The tax levy, we collect half of our tax levy in June, which is the prior fiscal year. But technically, that's revenue for the following fiscal year. And so so on a cash basis, I would book all that revenue to last year, and I would start the year with $0 in revenue. On an accrual basis, I start the year with $6 million of revenue, because half of my taxes I'm accruing and I'm moving them. I'm moving when I recognize them to the proper time. Another example might be an expense. If I'm paying for everybody to go, if I'm putting down a deposit for everybody to go to a conference in October, and I'm putting down a deposit in May, we may in the past have booked that to May, and it would show up as May expenses. But I'm really not going to the conference until the following fiscal year. So what I'm trying to do is make the timing of my expense match when I'm using the resource. And so it's just a matter of timing, and it's shifting things to match revenue expenses to to be recorded when they're being used or we're reaping the benefit of them.
And like Susan asked before, you don't have to do this retroactively, you can start putting it forward.
What I will do is at the beginning of, I will know from our audit where we will end the last year, and then I will make adjustments, and then going forward we will be on track, so that from this point forward I know what our results are.
Right.
And this is, again, the reason for doing this is because it is the way it meets the Government Accounting Standards Board's standards. So the state and the again, it's kind of like depreciation. It's just the rules that it's generally accepted accounting practices. Every company does this. School districts are supposed to do this. And currently our AFR, all of our state reports, so the budget we submit to the state and the budget and the annual financial results that we submit to the state are already on an accrual basis. We're currently paying our auditor to convert it for us. So they take our books and they move things around to the year where they're supposed to be, and we're paying them to do that. And then they submit it to the state, so that we comply with the regulations.
Is there, just to be the devil's advocate, is there an advantage to do cash accounting as opposed to accrual accounting? Cash
accounting is really kind of how you run your pocketbook. When you get paid, when you get your money, that's revenue, and when you buy something, that's an expense. Most companies...
But I don't personally have a fiscal year, so.
Most companies use an accrual basis because, it's a more accurate representation of what it costs to run the district for that year or the business for that year. And if you didn't have that, you could, again, manipulate your earnings by timing when you bought things or sold things to target a certain number. So the goal is to reflect the actual operations of the district.
As accurately as possible. Yeah. Great.
So now that we're done with the very dry accounting lecture, I'll get to the numbers. So our budget is balanced, and the differences from last year in total. So these are the differences, revenue and expenditure. Sorry, this is just this year's budget. We have by fund, we're taking in approximately what we're spending. We're increasing total fund balance by $9,000. We have an operating fund increase of $100,000. And again, one of the other state rules is that all of our debt service has to be paid out of the debt service fund. So I'm transferring money from our operating funds into the debt service fund to make that payment. And that's so we're $95,000 short here and $100,000 over there. So the top of our operating funds, this is what's reflecting what it costs to operate the district, and our debt service fund is just payments on the bonds that we have outstanding. My revenue assumptions were more or less last year's levy.
That's just
sure.
Those are newly refinanced bonds that are much lower than they would have been had we not done all that work earlier, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Just pat
yes, and our debt, there's our, that's the cost savings that is in there.
Patting a group pat on the back.
Yeah, and you'll see that in one of the later slides, a large expenditure last year to refinance the bonds. Revenue assumptions. 2013 levy is the primary source of revenue. I'm expecting to collect almost 100% of it. Our operating levy is up 7%. Our total levy is up 16%. Last year, you abated the debt service levy, meaning you chose to reduce your levy and not ask the community to pay for the debt service payment that year, instead paying it out of operating fund balance. So you'll see a significant increase in total levy this year, which I think you sent out a letter explaining to the community that you will see an increase in your levy. That's just because we reduced your levy last year and we're back to normal. I also moved the majority of general state aid out of the education fund, and I did this in order to balance each individual fund. General state aid, we don't get very much of it, and it's something that's probably going to go away in the future as the state looks at their equity in school funding. And being a district with financial resources locally, they will prioritize most of their money to districts in communities that do not have the same level of local resources. And so I'm moving it twofold: one, to balance this year's budget, and also to sort of put it somewhere on the side and not rely on that money for long-term operations in the event that it goes away suddenly when you're based on a change in law. We'll have the money kind of in a rainy day fund and we'll use it when we have it, but I don't want to become reliant upon it because it's likely going to go away. And then you'll see fee increases, and a lot of this, again, is just moving things like our Horizons program, field trips and sports camps, which the money was not booked as revenue in the past. It was put into an activity account, and instead reflecting both that revenue and then the expenses on our statements. So this is our total revenue. You can see our revenue is going up by a little over $2 million. Again, much of that is driven by the fact that we did not levy for debt service last year, and also we reduced the operating levy last year, again, to try to spend down fund balance intentionally to use up some of our reserves. This year we're getting back to kind of business as usual, and our levy is increasing as a result. So this just shows you the detail of the numbers that I already spoke about.
Jay, I had asked about, I understand the NRF increase is largely based on a percent increase on a small number to begin with. It's not that big a deal, but can you talk a little bit about the increase in the O&M from $1.2 million to $1.6 million?
The O&M, the increase in operating revenue in O&M, again, this is driven somewhat by moving the general state aid to O&M. This is where I put it. Also, the levy for O&M was increased by, I want to say, 16% or so. Again, this was the levy based on the assumptions that you used when you passed this last year, and it even with the large increase, it still represents, I think, a 15% decrease over the prior year's levy. So even though you're showing from last year to this year an increase, we're still much lower than we were 2 years ago.
The trend is down.
Right. This is just a representation of where our revenue comes from. 90% is from local property taxes, 5% is from the general state aid, and from revenue from the state for special education services, including transportation. And then the other local revenue are fees, and we get a little bit of federal revenue for title programs.
So basically the fact that, if you can go back to the prior slide, the fact that we're getting 90% of our revenues from real estate taxes has an impact on the reserve policy.
Yes.
On the what?
On the reserve policy.
Absolutely.
Right. Our expenditure assumptions, we have a net increase of 3.4 FTE that was approved by the board in the spring. We have a lot of new staff. Some of this FTE increase is temporary. And then we also intentionally have added some enrichment club stipends to try to provide more opportunities for students, especially gifted opportunities. I think there's some engineering, like Lego clubs and things that the district has been working on to try to just broaden the educational opportunities for students, Scholastic Bowl, science, things of that nature. The contract rollover was 3% salary increase. This is really driving the bulk of our expenses. This has been offset by a decrease in our health insurance premiums. We had a very good year experience-wise, so as a result, because we are joint and cooperative and we're self-funded, when we have good experience years, our premiums will go down, and if we have really bad experience years, our premiums will go up. So we're reaping the benefit of our good practices, and this will be important as we think about negotiations and how we want to design our insurance programs in the future to give an incentive for people to make good health insurance or health choices and to take better care of themselves. Then also we purposely, as we are going out for new architectural services, have not planned many capital expenditures this year. We're going to hold off to get the new architect on board and have them prioritize what we want to do with the buildings. So capital expenditures are much lower than last year. However, we did get the opportunity to purchase 2 vacant lots near the elementary school this year, and that pretty much is offsetting that. So we're more or less even in that respect.
I thought maybe we should elaborate just briefly for people who are listening or anybody here. We are in the process, we will be interviewing 3 architectural firms. There's a committee, I believe it's Rich and myself and some staff members. We'll be interviewing 3 architectural firms, and you guys reviewed, you had sent out a request for qualification?
We sent a request for qualification. We got 12 responses from some very qualified firms, and narrowed that down to our 3 top candidates. We will interview those candidates at the beginning of September, and then hope to bring a recommendation to the board at the September board meeting.
And that's all because we're required by state code to have an architect of record, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
I just thought since we brought it.
Yeah, no, that's good. So here's our expenditure detail. You can see that we're spending $5.5 million less than last year. This is a little bit misleading because we did have a one-time $5.5 million payment to our debt service as part of the restructuring. So we used funds on hand to pay off some of our debt early to save interest and for the taxpayers.
Yeah, and the $300,000 increase is basically the salaries went up 3%, and the benefits went down 3%, and that's the net result.
Right.
Okay. More or less.
More or less.
Okay.
This is just a depiction of how we spend our money. This represents the stuff we buy, so it's a little bit hard to read. 57% of our money is spent on salaries and 12% on benefits. So 2/3 of the budget is comprised of staffing costs, salaries and benefits. Another 13% is purchase services. This would be now software and other consultants and people that we pay to help us educate the students. And then supplies are 6%. Capital is very small, and then 11% is tuition that we pay to other institutions for special ed services, as well as debt service. So this is where all the debt service payments go. And then this is kind of why we're spending the money or what we're getting for the money. 40% is on instruction, 16% is special ed. People support services are things like social work services, psychological services, health services, so they're student focused. Staff support would be professional development for our staff. So we're spending nearly 3/4 of the money more or less directly on students and on their education. 23% is operations, and 9% is just on executive, basically central administration.
What's in operations, just in general, can you tell us?
This would be like debt service, maintenance.
So it includes the debt service as part of it?
Yes. And, the utilities and things like that.
And did these have significant shifts because of that restructuring that we did? Because I always thought that our salary and benefit figure was higher as a percentage.
That should not have, those shifts should not have impacted that, because salaries and benefits are pretty much always salaries and benefits. So you may have seen shifts between these 2 categories, or between capital and supplies, these 3, but nothing, salaries and benefits that's about right.
I just wondered if the section that said tuition and debt service had grown percentage-wise
Right, well,
because of that payment.
And most of the time, and I probably should have just quoted operating expenses, because debt service can significantly distort these numbers. So that's actually a good point.
I just have a question. Benefit is 12%, but it's 12% of overall expenditure. It's not 12% of salary basis, correct?
Correct. It's 12% of overall expenditures.
So what is actually the percentage of benefit we pay in relationship to salaries? Do you know that off the top of your head? I hate to put you on the spot like this.
I'd have to go back and calculate it.
But I think that is something that would be interesting to track too.
I mean, it would depend, because some staff, their benefits are a significant portion of their overall compensation. An aide who's making $15,000 a year and getting $15,000 in health insurance a year,
Right.
it's different than a teacher who's making $70,000 a year and getting $15,000 of, so there's a fixed and variable component.
Right.
So on average, I don't have that figure, but I can get that for you. And I will go back for next round and do this on an operating basis so that it makes more sense. So just this is what I was talking about earlier. There's a 19% increase in purchase services, 13% increase in supplies, and a 93% reduction in capital expenditures. And what is essentially happening is capital, I'm moving the student computers out of capital and they're showing up in supplies. So I'm reducing capital and increasing supplies. And then I'm moving our software licenses out of supplies into purchase services. So that's why purchase services are going up. And then supplies, it's got some in and out, so it's kind of middle ground.
There's your ratio too between benefits and salaries, it's about 16
yeah.
and 16%.
There you go.
To answer your question. Benefits are 1 and 6 on
Yeah.
non-one.
All right.
Here's our O&M expenditures. We're pretty much flat from last year. And last year we did have a $60,000 payment to the park district for parking lot. There was a settlement that the board reached with the park district. But otherwise we're pretty much flat versus last year. And then the final slide shows our projected fund balance. And our net operating fund balance, again, based on assuming that we come in at budget for this last school year, and that we meet our budget for next school year, I'm projecting to be just under 60% of expenditures for operating funds.
In our policy, the top
Which
is
is
50%.
within the range set by the policy.
So I have a question here, and I'm jumping ahead of it, and I meant to get to you earlier, but there's a discrepancy between this schedule and page 13 in one of your financial submissions. The fund balance and the numbers are somewhat different. We can get into it later, but I just couldn't tie them out.
In this presentation or in something else?
No, not in the presentation, but in the schedules that you submitted.
Mhm.
If you go to page 13 of one, we can get to the later.
Was it the state report?
Yeah.
The state form?
Yeah, there's a different fund balance number and a different than the 901.
Okay.
So maybe we can take note on that, unless you want to answer it
Anything
tonight.
different or just?
No, well, it's not 10 grand. I mean, it's more. It was more like $500,000. In fact, we can get to it later.
I've got the sheet of paper we want to look at.
You guys should,
We can get to it.
yeah, put your heads together afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was 8669 compared to 9012, so about 400 grand difference.
Okay.
It's the one where you have a blue balanced budgets, no deficit reduction claims required in that schedule. It's different.
That schedule may be leaving out some funds.
Yeah, I'm sure there's an explanation, I just couldn't figure it out.
Yeah. I think if you're looking at the no,
It's direct revenues, direct expenditures, differences, and then estimated
if you
fund.
look at the funds that are listed on there, I think it's only education, O&M,
Transportation.
transportation, working cash. So this one has IMRF and debt service.
Okay, so that's the difference between the two, okay. Why would you keep those out of here?
That's just how the state is defining operating funds, and based on the restrictions that for a fund balance that we have in certain funds, they don't include it.
Not that I looked at all these schedules. I did.
Anybody have any further questions for Jay? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And we'll see you again at the next, doing this, another one at the next regular, committee of the whole. Sure. Okay, so we've just done the tentative budget, and now we're gonna have a Lake Bluff Middle School facilities report from Plant Moran. And just as some background, we have asked them to come in and take a look at a similar study that was done by our previous architect, just to get a second opinion. And they're doing much of what has been already done, but giving another look at it, a fresh eye. Yeah. This is, I'm just handing out, this is the agenda for the next, for committee of the whole. Committee of the whole agenda for next week. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure. Real quickly, just want to do a quick overview of the presentation. We're going to keep this about 10 to 15 minutes of our slide deck, and then open up for questions and answers from the board. So just real quickly, an introduction of who Plant Moran Cressa is, kind of our snapshot and analysis and findings for the Council for Educational Facility Planning Institute, or CEFP if you will, and then take a look at recommendations and considerations as the district is looking at bringing on these architects. And as I mentioned, we'll open it up into the questions and answers format. Real quickly, a lot of people may not have heard of Plant Moran. We are actually a large financial management consulting company headquartered here in the Midwest. We've got over 2,200 professionals. We're the 13th largest in the United States, and we've got 16 offices kind of sprinkled around the Midwest. On our staff, we have a multidisciplinary team, really as attorneys, architects, bond planning experts. So my background, I'm actually the partner in charge of the educational practice within Plant Moran. So I'm an architect, American Institute of Architects, National Council of Architectural Registration Board, lead AP, and a bunch of other alphabets after that. Our pure objective is really to provide independence for districts and educational entities as they look at capital planning. So even though we have architects and engineers, we won't physically draw, but we'll do assessments very similar to what we've done for Lake Bluff going forward.
Were you graded on the curve with those A pluses, or is that just something?
That's our marketing team.
Yeah.
But just to give you an example, our educational team has completed over $1 billion in the Midwest for educational clients. Coincidentally, University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign has actually engaged us to take a look at their $1 billion capital program, as well as 1,200 people that work in facilities and services to really come and do an independent review. So just not to think of here at Lake Bluff, but also across the state of Illinois. A couple slides of our clients, everything from state of Arizona, state of Tennessee, Rockford schools, Elgin schools. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the free commercial here. But also our corporate, again, across the Midwest. So we do capital projects also for large corporations, healthcare providers, et cetera. So again, when we're providing cost estimates and schedules and different analysis, you should feel comfortable that we've got a background of that type of expertise going forward. So let's focus a little bit on the Council for Educational Facility Planning Institute. I know it's a mouthful, we're just going to call it CEFP from here on out. One of the things we actually did is take a look at BLDD's original facility assessment back in October 2013, so this report should look very familiar. Our biggest question oftentimes to the district is, what does 21st century learning mean to you as education? Ms. Bay, I'm sure you have some insight on what that may mean. What is 21st century? What are those core competencies that we're expecting our children to learn in terms of collaboration, both internally and externally? When I say internally, what's happening inside the classroom? Externally, how do you team up with other districts from across the state, across the country, and across the globe with technology? We also talk about digital natives and digital literacy. So again, understanding you've gone to a one-to-one computer device. That's helping encourage that 21st century learning environment. Critical thinking, problem solving, but most importantly, can they have oral, communicative type responses to these types of focuses in 21st century learning? So the CEFP analysis is really a benchmark that's utilized as districts look at what is the educational adequacy of the facilities. So, by the way, your facilities are nice, they're welcoming, they're very well maintained, but there are some areas that we focus not on just the BLDDs, but also use our own professional insight and really taking you from a 68% to where we're at now, just under 80% in terms of our educational adequacy. We've highlighted some of those improvements.
I'm sorry,
yes.
can you restate what you said? 68%, I think, current, and then you're proposing that we get to more like 80%.
No, actually, it's so I think in the original BLDD report they had you just under 69% based on the 100-point system.
Yeah.
Based on our independent review, you're right at 79%.
Okay.
And we'll walk through some of those items, what they mean in terms of educational adequacy.
Without spending any money.
But our recommendations here are to take you into that BB plus range going forward and some considerations for costs accordingly. We did have a chance to conduct multiple site visits to both the site and to the building. We met with Dr. Sophie and Mr. Conant and Mr. Blackmer, as well as several maintenance we were walking through the sites and the buildings. And one of the things we did is we really discussed what are those opportunities for 21st century learning. In tab 2 in the report shows kind of our 6 sections, our 100-point system, but also we provided a section of comments, things that the district could consider to take you, let's say, from a D to a B or perhaps a C to a B. So again, based on that, we did review the grading point system. We also took a look at the Illinois codes and their national building code, and we're going to address some of the questions you may have as it relates to fire safety and electrical and things of that nature.
And these are your grades?
Correct.
Is anywhere in here was it compared to what BLRD did?
Actually, we did.
Yes.
We left an X where the BLDD
Okay.
comments were,
Okay.
and then we also, in the comment stage, revised it from D to C or D to E or existent to etc. There are
But a
several.
lot of it had to do with codes, right?
Actually, it really goes back to educational adequacy. There are several code items that do comply with the current codes, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Because again, the building has multiple additions over a 60, 70-year period. So.
I just have a quick comment for those in the audience. The report is actually on our website
Good.
under our board packet for this month. So it is easily accessible for anyone interested in looking at it.
Fantastic. I did mention the codes. So for instance, the 54 original construction and the 61 edition, those would comply with the Illinois Administrative Code, sections 175 and 185.
What kinds of things fit in there? Because I know
Sure.
that's one of the questions we asked you to answer.
So for instance, recessed doors. So you have semi-recessed doors, and we'll show pictures of that. That currently complies with current codes. So you still have ample width for fire egress. That would be something that, again, complies with those codes and at the time. If the district goes through and looks at doing a major renovation, when I say major, more than 50% of the building, everything that's not current to the compliant code, which is actually the International Building Code of 2009, would then have to be brought up to code. So your toilet rooms, recessed doors, again, the fire sprinkler system would have to be reviewed in terms of the type of construction. We'll get into some of those details as we go forward. But again, from an analysis, if you were to take the BLDD report, take our report, what we did is literally just provide those comments as well as what were those existing scores and those opportunities for improvement going forward. If you take a look at the slides, basically we focused on C, borderline, all the way through non-existent. Your A's and B grades, keep up the great work. And then going forward from there. So our first major review, if you will, what I've done is really pulled out 6 or 7 items that we felt didn't reflect the original report, if you will, going forward. So for instance, well-equipped athletic and intramural areas. One of the things that we reviewed in talking to the district is you do actually have access to the facilities across the street. Now they're not yours, but you are currently using them. So I believe the grade was non-existent. Well, they are existent because you're using them. Our recommendation would be to either develop a long-term agreement. You also have 8 acres of site, so in theory you could actually develop your own athletic or playscape areas and have those on your site. One of the things you'll see in the report, we know that there is an existing elementary school there. There's some concerns about the soil. One of the things we recommend with the district and actually assisted with is having a geotechnical expert actually do 6 borings. I know that's currently in process. I'm sure that report will be forthcoming once those findings are available. But if the district does decide to utilize this acreage right here with the old elementary school, or even in the southwest, is you'd want to be able to put back soils that are appropriate. A great example is if you have a soccer field or a type of athletic field, you want to make sure you have ample impact profile of dirt and soils and things of that nature. So again, if the district decides to take it from a landscaping current usage, because it's green, it's well drained, that would actually take a look at more of an athletic type composition for that. So that's our school site as it relates to athletic and intramurals, as well as stable drain conditions. So again, kind of the 2 major changes I think from the BLDD to our report would be these 2 items right here. Shifting gears a little bit, section 2 really talks about the structural, electrical, and mechanical systems. Item 2.1, the structure meets all barrier-free requirements both internally and externally. So again, understanding that the original building was built in the 50s, the addition in the 60s, you do actually have compliance with the current codes as relates to those relative building components. One of the things we want to point out, for instance, our recommendation you'll see is we do think there should be an ADA type ramp at front entrance. While not required because you have one on the northeast corner of the property, it would be beneficial to have one on the northwest corner as well. The other thing that we took a look at is the toilet rooms. There's actually two conflicting codes. One is the toilet number of fixtures based on the number of students able to be contained in the building. You can't reduce the number of toilet fixtures in order to comply with the ADA because you're required by mechanical code to have a certain amount based on square footage. So again, you do have grab bars, you do have turning radiuses within the bathrooms, but some of them do not meet the new current 2012 ADA. Again, if the district was looking at renovating those toilet rooms as part of a capital program, those facilities would have to be up to par. And you probably have to add either a unisex or another type of toilet room to comply with that fixture count that's required by the mechanical code. So that's something that we took a look at going forward. Another section, 2.8, interior walls permit sufficient flexibility for a variety of class sizes. This is my model here, Mr. Khan. This actually currently is a code violation in the vocals room down in the lower level. You're required to have 6'8" clearance between any obstruction. Mr. Khan, I believe, you're about 6'1". He's about 5 or 6 inches above that soffit. The good thing about your school district is your class sizes are relatively small compared to, let's say, the national standards. With 14 to 16 kids, you have no problem having small group learning spaces within the existing classrooms. If you wanted to bring 2 or 3 sections together, perhaps a math science or perhaps a social studies foreign language, it'd be very difficult to accommodate those in your 800 to 900 square foot classrooms. So one of the things we're recommending is taking a look at potentially looking at additions to perhaps create some large group instructional space. We're not saying the entire building has to be that, but you should have 2 or 3 areas that could either be checked out through resource administration that teachers could utilize on an ongoing basis. This is just an example of basically a 1,500 square foot classroom. There's a dividing wall, so it could be used independently. A lot of natural light. The furniture can be able to be relocated very easily. And then technology-wise, there's various technology across different mediums of the facility going forward. In terms of ADA, you also have the elevator. It's been inspected on a yearly basis and passing inspection. In the report for BLDD, they do look at perhaps putting some funds aside if the elevator should ever to go down.
A quick question,
Yes,
just
sir.
out of curiosity. Did you know the BLDD scores before you did the report?
Actually, we did. That's the first thing we did is we looked at it, and one of the things we really focused on was were those items C, D, E, or
So
not.
you had that information, though, you just
We
didn't
did.
do your report and then go back and see how close you came?
Correct. And again, one of the things, I use that intramural, for example, they called you non-existent. Well, out of 20 points, you got a 0. Well, you're still providing athletic uses, it's just not yours. And so in our professional opinion, you are providing that space. Again, recommendations would be to conduct a long-term agreement or perhaps consider building on your own site. The next one is item 2.14. This relates to the number and sizes of restrooms which meet requirements. Again, I mentioned that in terms of you have competing codes with fixture count versus ADA compatibility. The fire alarms, smoke detectors, and sprinkler systems. I do know that your smoke detection system works. The painters were there sanding the wood doors and they went off and it was loud. This right here is actually the Lake Bluff Middle School fire evacuation route. You actually have 12 existing exits from this facility. Because of the construction of the building in the 50s and 60s, they constructed it to actually create what's called smoke barriers. So those additions do not have to be sprinkled by code. The 2009 actually does have sprinklers. So in the performance and band area, that does have sprinklers. If you look at the gymnasium, again, that space at that time and due to the construction type did not require the sprinkler system. So again, if you're looking at a major renovation throughout the entire facility, you may want to talk to your insurance provider and take a look at what would those costs be to install a sprinkler system versus what are our premiums. So again, it's always a question because people say, well, we don't have sprinkler systems. Correct, but you also have more than adequate egress out of the building, and also the construction at the time did comply with those codes for fire egress.
That was one of my questions looking at this. There were several places where you said, you meet the code for the, time period when that was built. which for a part of the building that was put up 60 or 70 years ago isn't very reassuring to me. Now I know some of the changes that would be made, and you know, if they were brought to, I'm a layperson, but if they were currently up to code, some of them might not be very meaningful. The height of the light socket or the light switch, I know is, you know, but something like not having the sprinklers, and I'm imagining there are other things like about the types of egress or whatever that might actually be significant. So did you look at that, like to say, okay, we know that it's up to code, but is it also up to a standard that we would want to provide for the safety?
Absolutely. Actually, as a father of 3 kids, 8th grader, 6th grader, and 2nd grader, my kids' schools were all built in the 30s and 40s. Not one sprinkler pipe in the entire building. But they do have multiple egress pieces. And the other reassuring thing is every year the district goes through a routine inspection, both from the state and from the local, and you've passed. And so if the fire marshal and the state didn't feel it was safe, obviously they'd have you address it. I did mention the 12 exits. That's typically double more than most typical elementaries have. So again, the hallways are well below the travel distance. So a great example is, you know, if I'm in the southern addition here, I've got an exit here, and also an exit here. So I really have 3 exits within literally 100 feet. So again, those travel distance of a non-sprinkled building, you're actually exceeding those distances. So again, I think the biggest thing is with the numerous exits you have, again, a routine yearly inspection. And again, if the state or the local didn't feel it was safe, they would definitely flag you and not let you occupy the building.
They wouldn't, you don't think that they would look at it and say, well, they're up to code, and...
No, we have actually a very stringent fire protection code in Lake Bluff. So clearly, I mean, I know because we've had a lot of problem with upgrading and so on and so forth, so you're okay. But I think that we should possibly...
We have a stringent code now, but this stuff doesn't meet that.
Well, I think that in a fire, what matters is to get the people out. The sprinkler system is actually a protection of assets more than a protection of life. And it means that the building is not going to burn down before the fire department gets there. The other thing, too, is that the fire department gets to fire sites in Lake Bluff extremely rapidly.
I won't put Mr. Blackburn on the scene, but what's the timing for getting students and staff out of the building?
About 1 minute and 25 seconds.
So again,
It actually takes less time, but that's as long as it takes me to get around.
that's right.
Right. Going fast.
Track shoes, track
Track shoes, right.
I'll bring my running shoes.
So that is a great question because again, as a parent of 3 children, and you know, that is the first thing that if there is ever a fire, you know, what is those process procedures? Knowing that you're roughly a half or a quarter mile from the local fire station, you've got multiple exits which are well below the distance minimum requirements, and then again, just from a timing standpoint, we feel confident that again the building is up to code as it should stand. That's actually a great question on the stringency. I know a lot of local municipalities, they take it very, very seriously when you talk about kids.
So I was just going to point out that the similar analysis might be applied to the ADA ramp, whereas we're in compliance because of the time when it was built, we may nonetheless want to do something, even if we're not compelled to do something for other reasons, inclusiveness,
Correct.
security. So I think similar to Leanne's concern, I would probably take an even stronger view on the ADA ramp.
Agreed.
Speaking of ADA ramp, section 4 talks about building safety and security. Here's your recessed doors. So item 4.10, classroom doors are recessed and open outwards. So this is just an example of the 61 edition where, again, it's a semi-recessed door. It's recessed about 1.5 feet into the classroom or out into the out of the corridor, if you will. Because of this width of hallway, you still meet the requirements for clear width between the doors when they're fully open. So again, that goes back to the egress standpoint. Again, if you're to look at major renovations, you know, again, you'd want to take a look at potentially recessing these doors completely. You lose a little bit of classroom space, but at the end of the day, that would obviously be taken through the review of the building plans when you get to that point. I just actually took 2 pictures. So this is the original 56 stairwell that leads up the administration offices, the main entrance. And here it is off of the performing or in the athletic area. So you can see, you know, again, the stairs and tiers, they do meet the requirements, handrail heights, number of steps, the distance of height and run between the stairs. Again, everything's up to the current codes as applicable. Should you look at, again, major renovations, how do you either maintain that ADA accessibility or enhance it really to create a better environment than what it's currently in. All right, educational adequacy. Here's where we get to the how do we improve the learning environment to support the 21st century learning. I've highlighted really probably a half a dozen to a dozen of things that we looked at. So again, personal space. Do students have a personal space close to the classrooms? Do we have a design of specialized learning centers? Is the library appropriate in terms of space? Do we have space for small groups? The music program, administrative counseling. And so one of the things we've really taken a look at here is what are those things that the district should consider as you're looking at interviewing architects going forward. In terms of the educational environment, section 6 is communicating among students. So one of the things I would just pick on is, here's your existing library. It used to be a gymnasium. It also, many people don't realize this, but you actually have clear story, which is very similar to these windows, actually above the ceiling, up on the upper level, which would let in natural light. These light fixtures are pretty much non-existent in terms of lamps, so again, some of the challenges of the district.
Those windows would let in natural light.
If there was not a ceiling in the upper level,
If there wasn't a
correct.
ceiling.
There is
above.
actual windows there.
Oh yeah?
We just don't make use of them because we have.
You have the offices and some of the specialized spaces up there. We'll talk about that a little bit.
Did you know you had windows up there?
Well, yes. There's a few rooms where there isn't.
Right. They popped out a ceiling tile to let in natural light in the office. I will tell you right now, this handrail currently does not comply with code. It doesn't have enough spindles and clear width, so obviously a student in theory could fall out. Very interesting design. I'll just leave it at that. So sample renovated spaces. I digress. This is actually an existing media center that we worked on. So again, you have clear story windows. Instead of having closed off walls and windows, they actually put glass and glazing, so you get more natural light in those specialized spaces. They also have small group tables, furniture that can be moved around. Also large group instructional space. So again, without adding on massive, again, large square footage for your media center, simply do an interior renovation to really enhance that educational environment and adequacy in terms of providing small group spaces, collaborative learning centers, places that students can just come and literally hang out. Right outside your gymnasium, you have large columns in the hallway. You have some, sofas and couches and things of that nature. So again, you're beginning that path. But I always go back to what is the curriculum? How does this space support it? We'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit here. Real quickly on administrative counseling. One of the things is you have some acoustical problems. Space problems. So again, if I'm a parent with a student, there's an issue, I'm walking through 3 or 4 individuals, nothing against Mr. Blackburn, but you can hear right through the doors. Teacher, workstations next door, clinic is undersized accordingly, so we'll talk a little bit about some of those recommendations, but I do want to point that out in terms of administrative counseling in the clinic area. So let's take a look at the recommendations. So one of the things that was in the BLDB report is really, I think, addressing more of those, I'll call them more maintenance and custodial type issues. Missing socket covers, light fixtures that may no longer be available, the T12 or the 1-inch tubes, things of that nature. What's interesting, if you take a look, in the 1954 edition, they were recommending roughly $10 per foot over a 10-year period to fix up that 34,000 square feet. Just over $350,000. If you take a look at the 1961 edition, we're looking at about $15.80 a foot to bring that up to, I'll call it, addressing priorities A, B, C, and D over the next 10 years.
Are you referencing something?
Yeah, actually, it was in the Lake Bluff report.
Okay,
and the
there's
reason,
nothing in your report.
No, and the reason we do that is I do want to talk about square footages for some of the recommendations.
Okay.
So think of your house. Hey, I want to put a fresh coat of paint, replace the carpet, replace some light fixtures. You're probably in that $10 to $15 a foot range for those types of renovations. When you start looking at putting additions onto the buildings, obviously your interior and exterior costs will go up, and I just want to talk about that a little bit. Coincidentally, if you take a look at the 2009 recommendations, it's only $2 a foot in the BLDD. So you can sell the older the building, the more uptake it takes to get into that aspect. So recommendation 1, we agree that you should have an ADU ramp at the front entrance in the northwest quadrant of the parking lot. One of the things we look at is being able to incorporate perhaps the tree and the landscaping. You currently have a retaining wall. So again, for roughly $25,000 to $35,000, again, depending on materials and types of construction, we'd anticipate an ADA ramp that would lead you right into the vestibule and into the foyer of the school without having to go through lifts and all that other fun stuff. So that would be our first recommendation consideration for the district. I did talk about the renovation of the administration, counselor, and clinic area, roughly 2,000 square feet of space. Again, you may utilize storage rooms differently. You may look at potentially repurposing different spaces for maybe some of those support spaces. But of 2,000 square feet, $35 to $60 a foot, again, looking at mechanical systems, electrical systems, types of furniture, technologies, etc. That would be able to address the acoustics, the privacy, and the lack of meeting space for the administrative area.
And those two projects really make sense perhaps to do together, right? They're right
Correct.
In the same location.
Correct. Moving on, we did talk about the Media Center Resource Library. Again, it's approximately 5,000 square feet between the lower level and the upper level. Coincidentally, this carpet and this carpet are very similar in terms of color and style, but again, the handrail changes, the lighting changes. You have some dead space here between the stair. You can almost envision two small learning spaces that could either be enclosed off or treated with some glass and glazing like you see here. If you were to come down this mezzanine level here, again, duplicating something along these lines, again, to let in the natural light, but also create those spaces of privacy as well as acoustics and help that small group construction. Those spaces, are going to be a little bit higher. Again, you're looking at metals, aluminum, storefronts, things of that nature. You're probably in that $55 to $85 a foot range to renovate those spaces to really create that collaborative learning environment going forward. One of the things we took a look at, and again, this is your site, and I know it's a little difficult to see on the screen, but in your report, one of the things you see is here's the potential athletic or playscape area. You'd be able to fit easily 2 fields going east and west, perhaps a smaller playscape athletic in the southwest quadrant. We talked about the ADA ramp here, again, renovating the administration counseling area. But one of the things we're looking at is that existing ADA ramp and also this ramp that kind of comes along to the north and to the east of the facilities, expanding the building out and creating either an expanded cafeteria, multi-purpose room, but also additional support spaces, toilets, storage for maintenance, custodial. I've got a great picture that shows you're utilizing your custodial closets to the fullest.
Loading dock, maybe?
Loading dock, absolutely. So one of the things you'd see is, here's the parking lot. This would become the loading dock back here, and you'd have access to the back of the house, if you will, to the performance area. One of the things we'd also envision is potentially even opening this up. We see a lot of districts using it for community collaborative type rooms. So not just dedicated to vocals, but again, a multi-purpose, multi-collaborative type space. They can move furniture in and out. Again, if you were to expand the cafeteria and the food service area, our understanding is you have food services off-site, you bring it on here with warming carts. So perhaps even backfilling the existing cafeteria now to maybe, again, a collaborative space. So again, that's kind of the addition that we took a look at. You're ranging roughly $275 to $300 a foot. Again, looking at potentially maintaining that ADA accessibility, really creating a focal entrance into the facility off of the northeast lot. And also here, we've highlighted again that media center portion of the facility in terms of renovation. If the district decides to potentially not expand in this route, there's another option looking at the site, is actually to duplicate this classroom wing over here. And again, one of the things we would look at is roughly a 10,000 square foot. You'd have ADA compliant toilet rooms over in this area here. You potentially could either renovate the other toilet rooms based on the student count to fully comply with the ADA. But very similarly, you have 2 large collaborative spaces, as well as, I'll call it more like the 900 square foot standards, what we see in today's classrooms, that could support large collaborative spaces. Again, additionally, you're right around that $275 to $300 a foot. In section 3 and 4, again, you do have these both total costs as well as independent costs. To give you an example, if we were looking at the 7,000 square foot plus the ADA ramp, the media center, you're right around a $3.1 million capital project. If you were to look to expand in the 10,000 range, you'd be roughly at 4.2. Those costs are all inclusive. We have allowances for furniture, technology, soft costs for architectural services, general contractor permits, all that good stuff that comes into the capital projects. But our overall recommendation is truly define what 21st century learning means to the district before you put pen to paper. And then from there, create that budget and then design to that budget going forward. So with that, I'll turn back over to President Barry.
Did you make any assumptions regarding enrollment? Did you keep enrollment steady, or did you have any?
Actually, we did take a look at your enrollment. Incidentally, we were actually one of the demographers recognized by the Department of Treasury in the state of Michigan to do demographic enrollments. We just took a quick snapshot. You're actually looking at staying at that 320-ish range for the next 5 years. People ask us, well, can you go past 5 years? Well, no, because they haven't been born yet. That's your incoming kindergarten class. But maintain that 325, 350 range for middle school. Coincidentally, do you know how many kids you can actually stick in an 800 square foot classroom by fire code? Anybody?
40.
Winner. Academically, you never do it. But in theory, if you were to count up all your classrooms, you could probably have 800 kids in that school very quickly. But again, it's one of the educational goals to keep class sizes small. And I know we may need 2 assistant principals.
Nate's head just exploded.
But again, that's we envision enrollment staying steady. And often people would say, well, why would I create these spaces? Right now, you do have some inadequacies as it relates to your vocals program. Again, we talked about large program group instructional spaces. Again, you are utilizing 100% of your classrooms right now. So in terms of specialties, again, large group instructional spaces, it's just very limited in the existing facility you have. So.
I have a quick question, and I don't mean to ask you this question to surprise you, but one of the issues, and I think I mentioned this to you before, is storage. Because we have that beautiful White Wolf trailer, and every day we're talking about we have no storage. I think in one of those, in one of the wings, depending on the square footage, we had talked about possibly storage in one of those, along with, by the loading dock, we could have storage, correct?
Correct. So in both of these, again, that's where even though we're architects, we don't physically draw the buildings. One of the things we talk about is the support spaces.
Right.
So again, how much storage do you need for a multi-purpose room? Let's say with the vocals upstairs, would you need riser storage, toilet rooms, outside storage? So in either scenario, both with the Northeast Edition or the Southwest Edition, we envision that you have ample storage. Again, I mentioned the janitors, custodial closets, exterior storage. That's a big concern.
Yeah.
So again, we envision those being part of that 7,000 square foot as well as the 10,000 square foot. And again, that's something you're going to want to define with the architect that's engaged to really make sure it meets your functional needs as well as the academic goals.
And you believe that the core of the building is in good enough shape to justify making additions on it?
I do. What's interesting, I know one of the things they said, well, foundations are cracked. Well, there is some superficial cracking down the lower level. I think it's in the art room in the southwest corner. When we walk the perimeter of the building, you don't have spalling of brick, you don't have any cracking in the exterior brick, which would dictate a foundation leak. Your mechanical electrical system has been upgraded. You did a bond in 2009. You have a new roof on the facility. So the bones are very good. Again, I think a lot of it is simply miscellaneous capital. Again, we mentioned the elevator. But all in all, it's a great facility. I think adding on to create the enhanced learning environment will definitely benefit the students and the staff as well as the parents. Because again, ultimately, what does education look like 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now? We have some clients that have buildings built in the 20s. They're still adding on to them because, again, they've upgraded mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems. And there's always the old adage, they don't build them like you used to. Well, your 1950s and 60s edition were built to last. We would envision, probably another 25 or 30 years left on those types of facilities before you'd have to, look at your exterior masonry system, things of that nature. But again, your facilities are well maintained, so keep up the great job.
Does anybody have any other questions? I just wanted to point out for anybody who listens to this watches on TV or watches the video later, that we're doing this for planning purposes, and we're not rushing into anything, and we're just collecting information. We're in the process of putting together a committee from the community to look at the issues associated with the middle school. We've had a couple of meetings. We're adding more people to it. It will be a committee that is very diverse and represents all points of view from the committee, users and non-users alike. And this is just the very, very beginning that helps us get the information necessary to help us do the right thing for the entire community and collect their input and make the decisions for the school district. So there's no rush here.
Follow-up question. On either option 1 or option 2, and perhaps it's in the rest of the next exhibit, but could they've been taken in 3 stages or 2 stages, such that you might do the administrative office and the ADA grant 1 year, and then the new music room and the cafeteria another year, and then the LMC, the Library Media Center. I probably would switch those last 2 in terms of priority.
Sure.
Or is it just cost prohibitive to do things, bit by bit?
I think from a design standpoint, it's more cost effective to draw it all at one time and then just create multiple bid packages. So again, I would draw the entire project as a whole. That's just our recommendation. Because you're paying that one-time architectural engineering design fee. And then again, just bid it out as time goes through it. So again, prioritizing.
Do one thing one summer and
Yeah, the good thing is they're all kind of independent of each other.
Right. That's
So
what it
they
seems
can easily
like.
be split off between, let's just do the administration and the ADA ramp. You may do the media center first. Again,
Right.
Again, that's always
Instructional, from an instructional perspective, that may be the.
But yeah, they're definitely the 3 entities within the report that can be done collaboratively, and that's why I kind of priced them out individually.
Yeah. Okay.
And then lump them all together.
And other than the design phase, where you do get sort of a benefit from doing the planning all at once, you don't get significant savings from doing actually physically performing the 3 projects all at once.
Correct.
Plus, you may not have time.
Right, I think it would be, time would be difficult. But all 3 of them seem manageable independently. But anyway, very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? A point that I forgot to mention when I said earlier about how we were forming a committee to talk about all this is this board was very deliberate in its establishment of its fund balance policy and what we did with refinancing some bonds last year to make sure that we had fund balance adequate to seed some of this work when we come to the point where we want to do some of this. So we are prepared to do some of this work. Anybody else have any questions, or we can move on? Jean?
Thank you so much. We appreciate
Thank
our
you.
work.
Appreciate it.
It was nicely done. Thank you.
Very well done.
Principals, you have school early tomorrow, and you probably have homework. So you can feel free to, and principals and Kelly, you can feel free to head out.
But Kevin, you have to stay.
All right.
Thank you.
So now we're going to go back to Jay, I believe. And item 6D, finance and operations, we're going to talk about setting some priorities.
Did you do a Prezi, Jay?
I did not. I feel so old school with PowerPoint. I thought I was slick with my PowerPoint. You are.
Then 23rd?
What's that?
Never. Yes.
Okay, well, I have a lot to do, and I've had different people ask me. I know some board members have priorities for things, and I've had people ask me about different topics, and so we were presenting some things and talking, and Jean thought it'd be a good idea for me to lay out to you what I think my priorities should be, and to have a discussion. And so I want to lay out the things that I'm focused on, that I want to accomplish, and set some expectations for how long it will take me to get to some of these things, so that so everyone is just aware of what I'm planning to do, and then we can make sure we're all on the same page. These also, by slide, are in order of priority, of importance, not necessarily in order of how soon they will get done. But this was how we laid this out to try to show what we feel is important. So the first thing that I want to address are systems and procedures, and also on the slide in the order that I can get to them, or order that I plan to do them, from top to bottom. So my first order of business is to look at systems and procedures dealing with procurement, how we buy all of our stuff, and to make it more streamlined, to reduce a lot of the paper, improve internal controls and transparency so that multiple people are seeing what we're buying and managing to budget. And then also to put in some e-commerce things so that teachers can order things kind of seamlessly online. They can go to online catalogs and order things, and it will pull all the details back into our system so that we have, so that it makes it easy for them. They can order supplies quickly, that we consolidate vendors so that we get better pricing and a better service, and can manage our spend better. This will also give real-time budget data to have everything in the system, so when people are deciding and putting in a requisition and asking to spend the money first rather than spending it and then coming back and recording it, they're putting in a requisition saying, I want to buy this, it'll come out of this account, and then there's a little pie graph that shows them how much budget is left, and we can determine whether or not to buy that before we actually pull the trigger. Credit cards, the district had lots of credit cards, both in administrators' hands and then also at the district. I think each school had 5 checkout credit cards, and so that was difficult to manage, and again, just from a control standpoint, it was not ideal. So I want to consolidate all of our credit cards to one vendor, which is a purchasing card format where I can control where the card is used. I can online change balances in real time. Gives me more control and flexibility. We can increase limits if we need to, and then additionally, all of those transactions are pulled into our financial system on a weekly basis, or you could even do it on a daily basis. We'll probably do it weekly, rather than waiting for the statement to come to see what we've spent and record them all. They'll be downloaded into the system weekly, and those transactions will go through an approval process similar to the requisition, so that both I and the superintendent will be seeing all of those credit card transactions in an expedient way. I would like to look at cash handling procedures. One of my biggest problems with the lunch program is just that there's lots of cash flying around the lunch program. Right now, there's activity accounts, and I don't think there's any fraud going on. I think the secretaries are very diligent in how they handle cash, but it's always good to have well-documented procedures, multiple sign-offs, segregation of duties, and things in place so that we can ensure that the cash is handled correctly. Scheduled reporting. A lot of the principals have asked me about their budgets, and I also plan to put out reports that are automatically generated weekly, get emailed to them so that they have budget reports of how they're spending towards their budgets that just automatically run every week, and then that they can run additional reports as needed. I think I spoke already about activity accounts. I'd like to minimize the use of activity accounts and restrict them to the school code's intended purpose, and run most of those other activities through the district accounts and through the district office, so there's better oversight. I know staffing is, as I indicated earlier, salaries and benefits are the largest expense that we have, so staffing is important, and controlling staffing is the single biggest thing you can do to control your expenses. So, and when I say staffing and position control, I mean full-time staff, but also we have lots of stipends and hourly duties that get spent, summer curriculum, and understanding and getting a handle on all those costs are important. And then I'd eventually like to put in some kind of electronic timekeeping system, primarily for non-certified staff who are paid on an hourly basis, but then also for certified staff to submit those hours for extra duties. So we don't have just paper timesheets flying around the district. It's all going to be in the system, and anyone will be able to see where the timesheets are at any given time. We'll have electronic administrator approval, and be able to kind of centralize that. And it will also save time and effort in the business office, because basically the teacher has to fill out a paper timesheet, someone has to bring it over to the district office, someone else has to type it into a computer, and it's just a lot of non-value added work. And then they have to ask for multiple approvals, and it'll also improve the time that it takes to pay people. So internal controls, always a big item. This is kind of second on my list. There are a lot of the things that I have already spoken about that I want to accomplish are going to improve internal controls. These procedures will get documented in our administrative procedures. This is one of the things that may take a while. I think that my first priority is to get them implemented and then to go back and document them later. But a lot of the things I want to do focus on the speed and timeliness of recording our expenses so that we have more real-time data on how we're spending relative to budget. Minimizing that lag will enable us to stick to our budget better. We will, again, asking to spend the money before spending it, and encumbering the accounts so that we don't accidentally spend something twice is important. Multiple approvals, so I will be approving all the requisitions and credit card purchases, so I want to see everything that gets spent in the district, not only from the standpoint of just to make sure that it's an appropriate expense, but I also want to make sure it's being booked to the right accounts. And being able to do that one transaction at a time is a lot easier than coming at the end of the year trying to go through a year's worth of data and get ready for the audit, moving things around. Jean, the superintendent, will also be seeing all of the requisitions and credit card transactions. And we've already started doing things like having multiple sign-offs on bank reconciliations, journal entries, and financial things like that. And then also a goal is to centralize all the financial activity in the business office. Currently, the schools handle a lot of the financial activity, particularly with activity accounts. They're depositing money in a separate bank account, they're writing checks out of it. And again, I don't see any evidence of fraud, and there's double signatures and the principals are involved, so it's more of just putting in better or more robust internal controls, and also for my benefit, because I will feel better just seeing everything.
So you can sleep at night.
Yeah.
Well, and I will share, as I think I've shared with several of you and I've shared with Jay, in my last district, I signed off on everything that was purchased. And that was from our auditor, who said, you're a small office, you have to have this many people approve your requisitions and your forms. So I'm feeling more comfortable with this process. And actually, I think I might have shared with you, Mark, I think it's faster. We've got it now into our electronic system that we're approving requisitions almost immediately once they go in the system. So Jay's already started several of these items already.
This is a good start, Jay.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I got 11 pages. Budget calendar, I think, I kind of came late into this budget, and Jane already had it mostly put together for me, and I just, was learning what's going on and was tweaking some things. I'd like to get to a point where I would like to put together a 5-year rolling model that, so I can
I'm budgeting for this year, but then I'm also budgeting out 5 years and continually updating that through the years so that at any given point, we can look out in the future and see where our fund balance is or what decisions we're making today and how they impact and how they will impact the finances 5 years from now. Because there are things that decisions that you make regarding the levy and regarding staffing that have very long-term implications. And it's good to be able to understand those instead of just doing it on a year-by-year basis. And then to establish just a budget calendar timeline for assumptions, we're going to do staffing assumptions in March. We're going to do levy assumptions in November, and just kind of have different gates where we're going to talk about the different assumptions. And then also earlier budget approval. By law, we have to approve the budget for the 14-15 year in September, but the year is already several months over, we're already 7 months into the year, and we don't have a budget yet. So it'd be nice to have a budget before the year begins so that we have something to control our spending. And as I've been putting in these systems, I've had people say, well, how much is in my budget? Can I buy this? And I don't know what to tell them because I haven't done the budget yet, or I'm still changing account numbers and things like that. So it's been, we've been trying to just get people what they need to start the school year, but I don't like to operate that way. I prefer to be buttoned up before the year starts so people know what they're doing. And I have spring 2015 on here. I hope I'm not being optimistic. I really would like to get to a lot of this stuff, and so don't hold me to that, I guess is what I'm saying. Selecting a new architect. This is something that we've been working on really since I started. We described it a little bit earlier. We put out an RFQ, and we had a lot of interest in it. We had 12 submissions from some of the finest architects in the city, and they each turned in a 75-page glossy color document that we had to go through. So there was some time in reviewing that, touring the buildings, and that we should be finishing that up in September recommendation.
If you're interested in the companies, I think I put this in your superintendent update, but there is a page on our website. If you go to district and then business,
bids and RFQs.
Bids and RFQs, it has all the architecture companies that submitted for us.
So I have in electronic form all their submissions. So if you want to see the submissions for the top 3, I'll send those to you. Update operations board policies. This is something that is ongoing, but we hope to address just a few policies where I wanted to make some changes sooner. We already spoke about the capitalization threshold policy. The P-card policy, there's just some tweaks with the language that I will propose. And then just as I said, updating the administrative procedures to go with those policies. And that's probably what we'll take. Food service program, I would like to try to get through this year with what we have, and when I say tweak for compliance, I think that's more compliance with some of the USDA rules regarding, or the state school code providing meals to students who qualify for federally subsidized programs. But I do have some ideas about how to either outsource the program or make it simpler I would like to stop people or change the process of payment so that people aren't paying in cash. We either have some kind of card that they can load money on, or people are paying online through the web and ordering in advance, so there's more planning. Currently we take orders during school time and take classroom time out of the day to order lunch, and then everything's kind of last minute and people are paying with cash, and it's just not a well-run program, and I'd like to either get out of the business of running it or make it streamlined. So we're going to study it this year. I think there are things we can implement this year, potentially perhaps with the help of the PTO, but at the latest, I'd like to have something in place that's different from next year. Financial reporting, I've got this kind of broken down into 3 areas in order of how long it will take to achieve them. The above the bar at the top, these are things that I've been working on since I got here, and I'm almost done. I'm in the process of converting our books from cash to accrual, updating the account numbers and where things are recorded to match the administrative code. So these things should be done shortly. Then this kind of on the wish list of things, this next category is dealing with reporting that you see in order to get to a report format that is repeatable and illustrative of how we're doing, that are informative. I think I'm going to try to convert our annual budget into more of a monthly budget. For that, I will need some history of spending, and it's just a little bit complicated by the fact that I've moved everything around, and where we spent it last year isn't necessarily where I'm recording it this year. So, but I think I can still get there, and so but that will take some time so that I can say, to date, this is what I've budgeted to spend, to date, this is what I've spent, rather than just say, I've spent X% of the budget. And then to get to a new treasurer's report format and board reporting format that is maybe is less busy, so kind of in summary format, maybe has some more graphs, displays where you are from a fund balance standpoint, and then is reproducible. And then lastly, to get the budgeting and reporting to a point where it meets the standards for recognition by the Association of School Business Officials and the Government Finance Officers Association. So there are professional organizations that set standards for your budget and annual financial reports. And they've got criteria. They say a good budget or a good financial report has these things. And so you can submit your budgets for recognition, and that's something I'd like to get to eventually. That'll probably be several years in the making. Quickly, we'd like to bring in new auditors. It's always good practice to change your audit firm every 3 to 5 years to get a fresh perspective, and so we'd like to go out this year and secure a new auditor. The process of getting the new auditor shouldn't be that time consuming, but whenever you do get a new auditor, they have their way of doing things, and they want you to report your information in a particular way. So meeting their standards will take some time, and then I'm expecting them to be more rigorous than our current auditors. So I think that's going to also take some time.
That's something Jay and I have talked about, because the auditors we used in my last district, I liked because they're used to small districts, and they were tough, and they interviewed board members. They really, and they always sat down with us and talked about controls and different things afterwards. So
one of the things that I notice every time we get the auditor's report is they always make a sort of a disclaimer at the beginning that they're not doing any kind of forensic look at what's happening. And I know we talked really briefly about this at the policy meeting. Did I understand correctly that school districts from time to time have somebody do a closer look at that aspect? Or
what we hire them to do is not a internal control audit, it's a financial audit. So what we've hired them to do is to determine whether or not our financials fairly represent our operations and are reported accurately. Mm-hmm. And so that's what they report, and they come out and say, the purpose of this report is that, and we haven't been hired to do all those other things. But they look at it and they'd be required to note something if they saw it. So they kind of say, we're not giving an official opinion on it, but we didn't see anything wrong going on. School districts can hire an audit firm to do an internal control audit as a separate service, and they would come in and do that for you for a separate fee.
Did I understand you saying that is fairly typical for that to be done occasionally, or no?
I don't think it's typical. I think it's more typical for districts to do what's required, which is to get your financial results independently audited for accuracy and presentation, but not for internal controls.
Okay.
I do know of districts that have done it, but it's not, I don't think it's common.
The audit report may make suggestion as far as looseness of internal control.
Right.
Or
They should
how to
ask
sort it
you.
out and, you know.
With
But we haven't seen
suggestions.
that so far.
No, and
That's why I'm
what I
questioning.
have seen from the auditor is that I used to get questionnaires, you know, as board
That's what I'm
member.
talking, right.
Or, you know, 3-page questionnaire on, do you have any indication of blah, 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 and I've never gotten this from the present auditor.
And our auditor, and the questions that I've been asked have been fairly cursory and,
Lame.
yes.
I would tell you that with auditing, I don't think this is the case with many things, but with auditing, you get what you pay for.
Yes.
So I do think we'll be paying more money for an auditor, but I can guarantee you it'll be a more thorough audit with suggestions to help us, so.
So just 2 more pages. New banking, I'd like to redo all of our banking. Right now, we have accounts with lots and lots of accounts. In fact, I think on your, on the agenda tonight is to approve some more signatures or bank signers, because we've got to change the signer on every single account we have. It's hard to manage, and we've got money kind of all over the place. I'm getting letters on dormant accounts. You know, the state's required to the bank's required to notify us that we have this dormant account that's seen no activity for X number of years. So there's kind of money spread out in lots of places, and it takes more time to manage. You have to manage all of your collateral levels at the different banks, and so what I'm proposing is to consolidate everything into a single bank, eliminate most of our accounts, just have the accounts that we need, have a separate investment account, and to implement some increased fraud protection measures. Positive pay is one, so we have to tell the bank what checks we've written, so they can't cash it if we don't send them a file that says this is the check number and this is the amount. Because we only reconcile the bank statements monthly, if somebody creates a check and forges it and cashes it, we can't do anything. We won't know about it for 30 days, and at that point it's too late to do anything. And the same would go for ACH verification. We send a lot of money out via people come in and take ACH payments, so our TRS, IMRF payments, lots and lots of vendors, and we can tell our bank we only want these different banks or these different vendors to be authorized to receive money from our account. And if it's anybody else, then it's blocked, and they've got to get separate authorization from us. So there are things that we can put in place to prevent things from happening. We haven't had anything bad happen yet, but I'd like to explore
Prevent that.
And that's also easier to do with a single bank and have a good relationship with our one bank. And then lastly, but not least, I guess, prepare for negotiations. This is ongoing for the year. We've got study groups planned, and I have a organization, or I'm getting together with business managers from other North Shore districts that are negotiating, and we're sharing information. So we'll do some benchmarking versus other districts. And that's an important, again, it's a very big driver of our finances and an important step for us. So it's something that will take a lot of time. So those are all the things that I'm doing. And
So Jay, I'm personally very impressed by this list. I think you've been through a lot of things, and I love the fact that you have this gigantic list, all of which seems extremely valuable, at least from my point of view. My big takeaway is that it's a gigantic list, and I just hope that you'll prioritize with Gene, and if there's concrete things that you need to move through this list so it doesn't get stalled out and bogged down, you go to Jean so she can approach the board for help if there's things that can be done to make this, allow it to keep moving forward. Because it just seems like tremendously important, but very aggressive list of things things to take on. So.
I'm just very happy about the list. I've been dreaming about this for since I've been on the board, and
This is good.
I'm in geek heaven. Thank you.
Yeah, very good work.
I've never heard of Geek Heaven, but
That's where she lives.
This is where I live.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
It was a very thorough report.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to action items with discussion. The first item is, as Jay mentioned, a bank approval, the resolution of Lodge Association or other similar organizations for the Northern Trust Company to add is it Jay's name to as a signatory to that. Okay.
This is for the activity account.
Yeah.
Not the middle school.
So may I have a motion to approve the resolution authorizing Jay Kahn as a signatory for the Northern Trust Bank account as per the form that was included in your board packet?
So moved.
Second,
May we have a roll call, please?
Leanne Charlotte,
yes.
Julie Gottschall,
Yes.
Richard Haig,
Yes.
Christine Leshinger, yes. John Rosen,
Yes.
Susan Ryder,
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes. The motion is approved. You are now a signatory, and you can submit that form. Okay. Approval of board policy for first read. We have, I should read all those. shouldn't I?
Actually, because it's published, so they can,
Yeah.
all the numbers are actually online.
Okay.
As published.
Two.
As published.
There you go. There's a number of policies. It looks like 20 or so.
Several. Many.
Yes.
The policy committee has been hard at work this summer. We have only one more large packet, and then we're back to business.
And would the policy committee like to update us, or is there anything they'd like to draw to our attention before we move to this to vote on the first read?
As published.
I had some comments, but I made my peace with them at 9 o'clock so we can move on.
And we're thankful for that.
All right. So can we have a motion to approve the policies for the first read, with all of which are included in your board packet?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Julie Gottschall,
Yes.
Richard Haig,
Yes.
Chris Leshinger, yes. John Rosen,
Yes.
Susan Ryder,
Yes.
Mark Berry,
Yes.
Leanne Charlotte,
Yes.
The motion is approved. Item 7C, approval of policies for second read. These are another 20 some odd policies that are in your board packet, available on your agendas at home if you want to look at them specifically, that we have reviewed at our last meeting back in June. July. And we did have some discussion on some of them, and now they are before us for a second read. Does the board policy committee have any comments they want to bring to our attention on these?
No. I'll move for their passage.
And second? All right, roll
Who
call.
was the second?
John? Roll call vote, please, to approve the policies.
Richard Haig,
Yes.
Chris Leshinger, yes. John Rosen,
Yes.
Susan Ryder,
Yes.
Mark Berry,
Yes.
Leanne Charlotte,
Yes.
Julie Gottschall,
Yes.
The motion is approved. 7D, approval of the 2014-2015 tentative budget, which we spent a lot of time in a great presentation from Jay earlier. Before we go to a motion, I neglected something I really wanted to do, and this can be very brief, is want to summarize for the community the philosophical guidance that this board has given to Jay over his time here. He's met with some people individually, just so it's all out there, so it doesn't appear like it's coming from one place or another. A couple of thoughts come to mind, but I'm sure that people will chime in that some of the things that we've asked Jay to provide for us. One is we're looking at our budgets now with no contingency approach. One is that we're trying to budget in a manner that is more consistent with private sector accounting. We are trying to provide budgets that's more timely, so provide monthly reporting, more detailed reporting, and also more what I would call big picture reporting. If anybody else would like to chime in and add to what you may have suggested to Jay or what we're doing, I
The only thing
appreciate
I'd
it.
like to say is that we're seeking to present a balanced budget, so we're not continually adding to fund balance year after year.
We're streamlining the budget and also do some long-range forecasting.
Long-range forecast.
So
yeah, that's
impact on the
good.
levy.
Yep. Good. So we just wanted to have that all in one place. If anybody wanted to look and hear our thoughts on that kind of thing. All right. Does anybody have any other questions or concerns for Jay on the budget? All right. Can I have a motion to approve the 2014-2015 tentative budget as included in your board packet and presented by Jay Collins?
So moved. Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Chris Letchinger, yes. Jen Rosen.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Leanne Charlo.
Yes.
Julie Gotchell.
Yes.
Richard Hick.
Yes.
The motion has approved.
Just a second.
Motion is approved. All right. Approval of date and time of budget hearing. I don't have anything in my board packet on that other than just the motion.
No, I've got it.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the Tuesday, September 23rd, 2014 at 6:45, the motion to approve a meeting for budget hearing, Tuesday, September 23rd, 2014 at 6:45 p.m. for the budget hearing to take place at the Lake Bluff Village Hall, 40 East Center, Lake Bluff, Illinois.
So moved.
Second. Roll call, please.
Chris Letchinger, yes. Jen Rosen.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Leanne Charlo.
Yes.
Julie Gotchell.
Yes.
Richard Hick.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Item 7F, approval of a personnel report, and I believe we're going to ask for a motion. Chris is
Yes,
going to
we're
have a
going
motion
to
on that?
split the personal report in two motions. One is about
Teachers.
The teacher.
Just do certified versus non-certified.
Okay, so yes. So let's have the first motion would be to approve the addition of certified person.
So the first motion would be to approve, let's see.
Four.
A motion to approve the certified personnel for August 26, 2014 that's presented, and that would include Katie Morrison, who's a .4 FTE art and drama teacher for the salary of $17,188, effective August 14, 2014, and she's replacing Barbara Ferenz, is that how you pronounce that? So can I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Second, and roll call vote, please.
John Rosen.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Leanne Charlo.
Yes.
Julie Gotchell.
Yes.
Richard Hick.
Yes.
Chris Letchinger, yes.
The motion is approved. Okay. The second portion of the personnel report, we would like to have a motion to approve non-certified personnel or recommendation of jobs in the Lake Bluff Middle School cafeteria, correct? And we're talking about Elizabeth Stilts, cafeteria supervisor, with a new salary of $29.50 an hour, effective August 21, 2014. This change in job title to reflect job duties and level of responsibility. And secondly, we'd like to also include Diane Zavitz at the middle school, also as cafeteria supervisor for the salary of $29.50, effective August 21st, 2014, for the purposes of a change in job title to reflect job duties and a level of responsibility. So may I have a motion to that effect?
So
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Leanne Charlo.
Yes.
Julie Gotchell.
No.
Richard Hick.
No.
Chris Letchinger, yes. John Rosen.
I abstain.
The motion's approved. That was 7F. 7G.
You know, before we move on, I just want to give a little context to the no vote. First of all, I want to thank the individuals who fulfilled that role for their service. I understand they do a very good job and certainly a very important job. So the no vote was not anything certainly reflective of their service, nor was it reflective of their eligibility or suitability for a raise. I agreed with those things. My concern came from the amount of the raise at this particular time. So that's the context for my vote.
Okay. Thank you. Item 7G, approval of consent agenda. So on tonight's consent agenda, we have the minutes from the regular Board of Ed meeting from July 22nd, 2014. We have a P-card report, a bills payable report, a June treasurer's report, a July treasurer's report, and the activity reports for the Lake Bluff Elementary School and the Lake Bluff Middle School. Would anybody like to pull any of those items from the consent agenda
No.
for discussion? All right. Can we have a motion to approve the consent agenda for August 26, 2014, as presented by the
Second.
administration? So we have a first and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Mark Bear,
Yes.
Leanne Charlotte,
Yes.
Julie Gotchall.
Yes.
Richard Hay,
Yep.
Chris Fletcher, yes. John Rosen,
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
The motion's approved. We're done with voting with action items. FOIA requests. We have no FOIA requests to discuss, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Item 9, public comments. If anybody would like to address the board,
There's no public.
feel free. Reach out to us if you'd like to. Is there anything that any board member would like to bring up before we adjourn for the evening?
Nope.
So may I have a motion to adjourn at 9:42? First, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you for your time and your hard work.